Happy Pride Month, friends and lovers. Black lives still and will always matter. So do all Black lives. That includes the LGBT community. So we have a very delicious, very tantalizing quid promo from the Thanks for Coming podcast. Seth, Jamal, Stoney, we fucking love yous. Take the promo away.
Well, hello, America, and thanks for coming. My name's Seth. What's yours?
Hey, it's Jamal.
And Stoney.
Have you ever had Drag Race withdrawal? You know the symptoms. Not enough glitter, eyelashes not staying glued down, and that red itchy rash that just won't go away.
You should see a doctor for that.
And the only prescription for your blues is more Thanks for Coming, the most magically gay podcast.
With at least 150 podcasts, 7 seasons of Drag Race coverage under our belt, and topical queer discussions, there's a little bit for everyone here.
That's right. We're even featured on Cosmopolitan's list of top 7 RuPaul's Drag Race podcasts that spill the hottest tea. Join us every week as we bring you a fun recap of the latest episode of whatever season we're covering.
It'll make you feel like you're back on the couch discussing the latest episode of Drag Race with all your friends. Stop by thanksforcomingpodcast.com for links to listen on your platform of choice, links to all of our social media and recent happenings.
Oh, what are you waiting for? Go check us out, Hanny. Thanks for coming, a RuPaul's Drag Race podcast.
Hey, friends and lovers. Welcome back to the For Your Reference podcast. You got your host, Katie.
And Oti.
And watch out, the sun will rain with this door-to-door service. Again, we are rounding off and we wanted to participate within Pride Month. So this week, we are diving into the 2018 Kenyan film, Rafiki.
Woohoo!
Woo-hoo-hoo. So let's dive into the stats.
So Rafiki is written by the wonderful Wanuri Kahi and produced by Steven Markovitz, written by both Wanuri and Jenna Katobas. To jump onto the cast, we have Samantha Mugatia as Kenna, Sheila Muniva as Ziki, Neville Misati as Blackstar, Nini Washera as Marcy, Jimmy Gathu as John, Charlie Karumi as Waireri.
What a cast.
What a cast indeed.
What a film. And what a delicious voice. Why do I even do the stats OT?
I have no idea.
Hashtag OT stats. Well, welcome, friends and lovers. If you have found us in this deliciously vibrant Pride Month, we love you guys. We take kindly to your kind around here. But I guess it's just to say this is where we move into our first impressions, which is usually where we talk about the film or where we've seen, their particular works before. If you couldn't hear from Oti or his accent, Oti is Kenya and he grew up in Kenya, and I'm not, but I do love Oti. So let's dive into the first impressions. This has nothing to do with anything, but Black Panther also came out in 2018. And Ryan Coogler was also there when it premiered at the Cannes Film Festival. Rafiki was also the first Kenyan film to be screened at the festival.
Yep.
Yes. And I guess just in case we get caught up in discussion and we don't get to cover it, the Kenya Film Classification Board did ban it. So it premiered in Cannes in May of 2018 and it didn't get aired. But luckily it got lifted. Well, not luckily, there was a lot of work, but the ban got lifted and it was screened for 7 days in September of 2018 to a sold out cinema.
Woohoo!
So let's dive into the first impressions. Oti.
So I think ever since we had the Rafiki would be coming out and the sort of backlash it had, it got me intrigued as to, wow, this, I have to watch this
Yeah.
because,
Oh, it's a shame. So the backlash is what got the attention. Not
yeah, the backlash,
Oh,
because
that's
I
a shame.
hadn't heard about it, even it being nominated.
Mm.
I just heard of the backlash first, and I was like, oh, this will be cool to watch.
Because even then, we watched it last year, so we didn't even watch it when
No,
it
we
premiered.
watched it last year.
Yeah.
It was hard for us to come by the movie, but at least once it got into the sort of streaming sites, we were able to get it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I completely fell in love with this movie. I have never seen such a movie done, especially in a Kenyan setting.
Uh-huh.
Last year we did A Single Man, which tackled sort of the sort of homosexuality in a sort of different way.
Grieving and loss.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then with this, we get to experience what it's like to be, for the queer community in Kenya, where you're not really recognized, and then how people would react, the stigma that follows, and what it would do to young people who are trying to navigate their way of experiencing love. So it had moments where I got tongue-tied, I just couldn't breathe at times, and it just hit me on a different sort of level. And I truly fell in love with it. I think it's one of the best sort of movies I watched last year. And rewatching it today just confirmed what I already knew. It's really solid.
And I guess the interesting thing is, it's something that I knew, but it falls to, the foreground of your mind. But I forgot that homosexuality is actually still illegal in Kenya.
Yep.
And because I guess when you think of like Uganda, it's not to that level. So I thought it was more like social shame as opposed to actual laws. But I guess that also influences how I feel overall about the film. But is there anything else you wanted to say? Because, all the time we talk about frame of reference and we are fully in it. So
I think the frame of reference was so important in this because I think some of the nuances missed by Katie, I got them abound. And there were moments where I was watching and really grasping every moment, every shot, every scene, from the little sounds in the background to the songs, the scores in this. It has such beautiful songs to display, to portray the sort of emotions going on at the time, and then there's other place intentionally devoid of any sort of sound or some music, especially when you have Ken and Ziki sort of making love for the first time, and it was all just raw and
vulnerable.
and very vulnerable, and I felt that a lot.
Nice. I guess that's also an important thing as well. The thrilling thing about cinema is you don't have to have lived the exact life of the protagonist or any of the characters inside of a film to be able to resonate in some sort of way. But frame of reference definitely means a lot. And on a lighter sort of note, OT talks a lot about black tax, but I think there was some whopping Kenyan tax you got.
No taxes in this. This movie did not deserve any sort of taxation in as much as I wanted to give it. I rated it quite highly.
Oh, so this is an objective Kenyan review.
This is quite an objective, unbiased review.
Coming live out of 254. Oh, but this film was so proudly Kenyan. I guess just coming to my sort of impressions, through way of love and through an enthralling relationship with OT, I've had the pleasure of being in Kenya many times. But that is not to further extend to understanding the LGBT community in Kenya.
Yeah.
So even that as a culture, or even that, as a group, that is something that I don't understand. What I also want to say is that film and the arts can fucking change culture.
They can.
And art is culture. And we've watched this twice now, and I just want to make it very clear that what this film has done and what this film will continue to do in the cinematic landscape of world history of queer cinema is something that it cannot be watered down in any aspect.
No, it can't.
And it was interesting, and I think it's also because of the climate now and the heaviness of the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement. But I felt a lot watching this, and I felt a lot more than I felt the first time that I watched Rafiki, and I think it is to do with the climate and what's going on. But I guess what I wanted to say from the outset is I fucking love this film. I love what it has done. I love what it stands for. I love Wanuri. I love that she stands very firm in the fact that she didn't want to change the film in any way. An example of the Kenyan Film Classification Board wanting it to have like a remorseful sort of ending, like being apologetic about being queer in any way. And she chose not to do that, and she chose to take them to court. And that is so important. And it also really upsets me that, there are so many accolades, and the fact that this got screened in Cannes as the first Kenyan film, and it was passed on being nominated for the foreign language film category for the Oscars. It just upsets me. I don't think it's fair. It's Kenyan, it's for Kenyan cinema, but the powers that be just didn't want it to happen, but they would obviously revel in the successes that it had. And there's a part of me that feels really upset over that. But at the same time, I don't think this movie was perfect. So just remember how much you love Katie as we continue this discussion. I understand fully how important this was. And even at the end of the film, looking at the credits, how many people were involved in the making of this film. That is a message alone to the changing landscape in Kenya and, traditional or religious sort of attitudes towards the LGBT community.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. And I think one of the many things that the movie does well is sort of portray a lot of things that Kenyans don't really, or Africans don't really want to come to terms with, and they'd rather just pretend as if it's not happening, rather than face the facts that people are allowed to love whoever they want to love. And it's their fundamental sort of right as human beings. So to stifle that sort of right for them is quite inhuman. And this movie tackles that. And I think one of the ways that Wanuri portrays the story, you'd fall in love with Kenna and Ziki, and especially how Ziki was you could not look away.
Oh, she was so vibrant.
So vibrant. So vibrant. And I don't know what I'm mumbling. We should just head into the moves to just continue the podcast.
So there are quite a couple of themes that are covered within this film, and we'll obviously be able to draw in a lot of the characters as we continue that discussion. Obviously, we are going to first tackle sexuality. And how it was portrayed in the film. Feel free to add any context, OT, if you feel you need to. I really appreciated the dynamics between Kenya and Ziki. Like you were mentioning earlier, Ziki was an effervescent force. And she really had this vivaciousness for life. And as a contrast, you have Kenna as a introverted tomboy. And she's also coming to grips of something that she's probably known her own life. But cultural sort of expectations, religious sort of expectations get in the way of that. And it's sad. And also at the same time, Wanuri was talking about, so many films, so many countries contributing to queer cinema, but not necessarily having that for Kenya.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely important to have, and it was interesting and it was thrilling to watch these two just try to fucking figure out the world.
Oh yeah.
Like you were mentioning with Ziki earlier, I think just in general, as I like to always say, life is fucking hard, right? And we need to be our own protectors of our own sense of self and our own happiness. And something that really it really got me upset, later on in the film, and I guess we can talk about it now, we can talk about it later, is when we start to see her glimmer it starts to dull essentially.
Yeah.
And what surrounded, what made her so vibrant started to fade away. And she, to her own detriment, she started to fall into what she thought she should be. And that was one of the most upsetting things, that she couldn't even just be her fucking self.
Yeah.
Because as we see at the start of the film with Ziki, her dad's already a congressman. Right. And they seem like they're in an affluent sort of area. Obviously there's a certain sort of tendency to follow and conform to a certain way of life when you're that sort of child, being raised by those sort of parents. And she really found her own happiness in the world.
Yeah.
And when she tried to share that, when she tried to entwine that with Kenna, it became such an ugly force, an ugly thing. Even the movie poster of Rafiki is so vibrant and it's nice and it's colorful, but I don't know, again, maybe just with the climate of what's going on, I felt this film was so heavy and so sad.
Yes, in as much as it was sad, I think the sort of hope it gives sort of lifts it, because we have two people trying to figure out the world. Kenna just thinks she's gonna be a nurse because that's what she expects.
Well, she didn't even strive
like
for
she didn't
much
strive
more,
for much, and until you get sort of this Ziki coming to the picture and telling her, why are you just dreaming about being a nurse? Aim higher. You could be a doctor, and then that's when it starts, and then you could just see the cogs turning.
Yeah.
So in that respect, like it was more seeing the sort of development as characters for them in this movie, which was really great up until we got to the sort of last quarter of the movie where it got pretty dark quickly. But I think up until then, it was quite cheery in as much as it was also portraying the sort of attitude towards gay people, which was sort of so casual. It was so casual, like every day you could just insult a gay person and it's just, oh, normal. This is gay because it's gay.
There were quite a few examples of that as well. Actually, while we're coming to that, unfortunately, I couldn't find the specific name of the character, but we do have a male gay character in this movie. And I think even the way he's first introduced into this film, he's being called names. Not necessarily by Blackster, but he was egging it on by his friend. Is that something that's quite normal, just casual sort of slurs?
Yeah, it's all too common. And I think shining a light on this sort of casual hate and abuse is really important. So we saw him. He didn't say anything, but we saw his struggle. He's been through that.
Yeah.
But he's still in the community because that's all he has. That's all he knows.
That's fucking sad, because he even goes to church, even though people stare at him as well.
Yeah, and you can see, in as much as Kenna didn't say anything, but she was still involved in that. Like, she didn't really think too much about it. And up until the end where they're sitting together and you could just tell that, because the guy doesn't even say anything then.
Yeah, which I think was a conscious decision.
Yeah, but you could feel the moment. You could feel the moment of how important that was. Now you understand. Now you get it. This is how we are treated. We are not normal. We're not normal in society based on them. And we're just outcasts, and that's how it is.
From a film point of view, I it's interesting because the first time I watched it, I'm like, okay, cool. Second time I watched Rafiki, I felt very emotional. I felt very deeply for Kenna and also Ziki. But the feelings that I felt for these characters were during those violent, harsh sort of moments. When they had the tender sort of romantic moments, I didn't necessarily feel like it was earned. I
Oh,
think,
really?
yeah, I think if anyone has had any sort of semblance of a two-way love, I think a lot of your feelings can be applied through experiencing these characters. But I think it would have been nice to have a little bit of their happiness. Like, I know they had very pivotal moments where they were happy, or, you know, and it's not even necessarily a physical, I needed to see them physically make love and I would understand that. I don't feel like that's necessarily the case. But I felt like we needed to live a bit more in them as characters, as opposed to just them trying to come to grips, or, you know, trying to come to each other's sense of sexuality.
Mm.
And that's how I felt, at least personally. Like, I know about love, you know, I know a thing or two about love, and I applied that into the movie. But without having that, I found it hard to not necessarily believe the characters, but I found it hard to feel. And again, it's not necessarily in regards to like graphic sex scenes, or even, you know, the amount of screen time kissing. You know, Pride and Prejudice. Got to talk about Colin Firth for a second. But there are love stories where you don't have physical sort of entanglements, but you can still feel the depth and the longing and the yearning for love.
I think I maybe we're just completely different because I felt that. I felt that in Ziki looking at Kenna, the longing, staring, how close they were, the lips, the every motion with the hand, the caresses. It felt so intimate in a way that I have not seen a Kenyan. Maybe that's from my perspective, because it felt like I was in the room with them, and I wanted to close my eyes because I wanted to give them privacy. And it felt like,
Then why are you in the fucking room then? Get out, you pervert.
all of a certified buff, so I'm in there.
Yikes. You're not in there, hopefully.
So it got me in a different way then, because I really did feel the chemistry between Kenna and Ziki. In as much as how they felt for each other, it was really clear. And I think one of the moments that I really got sort of emotional is because we're introduced to Ziki as a sort of carefree, bubbly sort of character who's always happy, energetic. And then by the end of the movie, we have Kenna going to Ziki's bedroom, and Ziki doesn't even look at her. They don't even make eye contact. And you could see it in her eyes. All that happiness, all that joyfulness and bubbliness had gone. That was so raw for me. And you could see, because we were introduced to this character in a sort of different light, and then it all just turned bad really quickly. And I just had feelings. I really did feel that too much.
Oh, I felt those feelings. And I guess we also glazed over the fact that, you know, they were severely beaten, and there was a whole scene preceding that. But just to come back to where you were, you could see the light dimming. You know, she didn't shine as brightly. And unfortunately, because they had been physically assaulted, obviously it's a scary thing. So that's where she started to fall back into, you know, accepted cultural, religious sort of norms. And it is a dynamic shift, because throughout the movie you have Ziki, which is she's a carefree spirit, and then you have Kenna being a bit more grounded or a bit more conscious of the culture and the society that they're in. You know, when Ziki's parents were getting angry at her about her grades, she's like, yeah, we can move out, like you'll become a doctor and we'll live together. And she had this idealized sort of notion of how their life would be, romanticizing how their life would be. And that's cute and that's lovely. And then you have Kenna being like, I don't know if that's going to work. And then when you have them getting physically assaulted, that's where Ziki, it was sad. It was very sad to see that shift.
Yeah, I think it was also more to do with sort of Ziki's naivety and her unadulterated sort of view of the world.
She's just more progressive, right? She's just born ahead of.
Not really even progressive, just, I'd say just naive to the fact that people do care about this shit. People do look out for this shit. And they were in church and she touched Kenna's hand and they were trying to hold hands or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And then Kenna got really angry. She walked out. She said, you can't do that. Everyone's there. Everyone's watching.
Yeah.
Because people are looking. People are watching.
And they're gossiping.
People are gossiping. Mm-hmm. So from her perspective, she's all this, I think it's more sheltered lifestyle where she's not really in tune to what society is at that level.
Well, I guess she also, like you said, in regards to being sheltered or being like affluent, I guess she just didn't understand the sort of repercussions and how real and how hurtful physically and emotionally they could be. But if Kenya was a bit further, more progressive, she wouldn't have had a problem. And hopefully,
explain that. Had a problem how?
Like if it wasn't illegal in Kenya and she could live freely, then it wouldn't be naivety.
Yeah.
So I agree that yes, she was naive, but there's a little tiny Katie part of me that does feel love, where if she was in a different country, this wouldn't even be right.
Yeah.
So I guess that's just something to know. But it was sad. It was sad to see that someone that is such a positive force, lose that, especially when they were sitting at the police station and the dad came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's one of those stories where you have to understand the sort of context in where the world or of where the story is being made.
Mm-hmm.
It's illegal, so everything they do, regardless of whether people need to be progressive, in the eyes of the law, that's illegal.
But the beauty of this film is it's going to open up a discussion, and it's not going to be overnight. But people poo-poo the arts, but it really does change and shift culture. Sometimes it takes too long and arts needs to push it. But I think there is definitely power in creativity and, Kenyan artists and to bring this story to light. So hopefully it is the start of many sort of steps.
Oh yeah, for sure. Just waiting for a Ugandan version.
Yikes. Well, friends and lovers, we are in it for the long haul, so we'll still be podcasting when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, before we move on to other sort of sections, just while we're still in this sort of discussion, I do want to talk a bit about the physical assault between Kenna and Ziki. Something that has been, simmering over the course of the film is Undata has a kind of relationship with Blackstar. And she is constantly, very visibly jealous of Kenna.
Yeah.
And I think the jealousy is fueled by Blackstar's nonchalance about her existence.
And his pursuit of Kenna.
Yes, and there was nothing she could do about it.
Yeah.
There's obviously a lot to say about Mama Atim, and I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, or whatever the Kenyan equivalent is. But in regards to Nuta, she kind of becomes the catalyst of what drives, one of the most emotional and one of the most powerful sort of scenes in this film.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that it wasn't just out of nowhere. Very similar to, was it Chapter 2, where it kind of felt a bit tacked on, where they had a similar sort of scene to effect.
The whole It series is tacked on. So
Okay. OT Pennywise is not a fan, but feel free to go listen to our It episode. But it does have a similar scene. That's why I brought it up. It's for your reference, friends and lovers. But when we have the scene of Kenna and Ziggy being physically assaulted, it is through her jealousy and through her own actions. And it is a very interesting, poignant sort of message, which I believe was deliberate. How her own personal vendetta, she used the society against Kenna and Ziki. So she had her own vendetta, but she knew that people would feel a certain way about the situation, and she used the community against them.
yeah, she did. And I think one of the better things to come out of that is Blackster didn't care. Blackster was still Kenna's friend. And I think that was really pivotal, especially when Kenna was pretty much dumped or told to go away by Ziki. The only person she could talk to was Blackster, because the mom, oh my God, the mom
Jesus,
was
the mom.
ridiculous. The mom was super religious.
Yeah.
And you know how that goes.
So let's stay with Black Star, because we definitely have a lot to talk about the mom and religion. But I guess this is a film about love, and it might be romantic love. It might be, unfortunately, there's not a lot of like family sort of love in a lot of aspects. But Black Star, it doesn't even matter. He loves Kenna. And I think it feels like that sort of love that he'll always have for her.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether that's going to be reciprocated, it was unrequited love. So definitely that was the only place that she had to turn.
Oh, yeah, it was. And I think because we saw Blackster heckle the gay guy, he was there right on it. And I think I'm assuming when he heard about Kenna, his feelings for her outweighed any sort of prejudice that he might hold.
But I think also at the same time, like it's unfortunate, but if you've grown up in Christian dominated, or just like any sort of religion, like sort of dominated country, there are casual like pastimes of just, making fun of gay people, right? It's unfortunate, but it happens. And it's interesting to see through the experience of Black Star. Yeah, he's casually, participating in it. But when it's applied to someone that he loves a lot, it changes his view, or at least just for her. And I guess in some cases, maybe that's as much as we can get.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it changed his view. I think it was just more, I think he just really couldn't understand why Kenna just couldn't find it in her heart to love him. To the point where when he offered Kenna a ride towards the end of the movie, and Kenna was like, because all this ride, she was going with Blackster on rides throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
But at this point, she just said, I'm sorry, I'm in love with Ziki.
Yeah.
And that just pissed off Blackster so much.
He's like, screw you, guy. And then he just drove
like,
off.
why can't you see I'm the one here for you. I've always been here for you.
But like, are you obligated to someone, specifically in this case, a man, just because he's there for you? Because is that friendship a fraud? I don't think that's fair, though.
No, it's a fraud. I don't think he was coming at it from. I think he just felt really hurt that the feelings weren't being reciprocated.
But I don't think Kenna actually let him on. To be perfectly honest, because he is a straight man, I feel like because he didn't see Kenna with a man, he just assumed that she was for him. Yeah, let's move on to a different topic. Do you want to tackle religion first, or you want to tackle politics? Maybe politics in Kenya. If you've listened to our first episode, which is
Black Panther.
OT had a problem with my Daniel Kaluuya Hallelujah because he reminded OT so much of corrupt sort of politicians. Not to say that we have this in this film, but it's what we in the industry call a segue. Or an attempted segue. So there's definitely a theme of politics in this film. So do you want to go first?
Oh, yeah. So Kenna's dad wants to vie for a seat.
Mm-hmm.
He's been nominated by the community because they just want to remove the popular, richer current member of parliament, per se. So it's sort of interesting to see that the dynamism of how that works, because it pretty much shows you that if you're poor or have little resources to run a fully fledged campaign, people with more money will always outdo you, and you'd always get that vote because you get your message out, or you can bribe more people to vote for you on the day. And we saw him struggle with that. We saw him struggle. He's put up posters on his small kiosk.
They graffitied it.
Yeah, later in the movie. And then you'd come with Okemi, who was Ziki's dad, with a full-fledged, like 3 cars, motorcade, with people singing and shouting, saying how they vote for them. Him on a bus just waving at people and stuff. And you're like, oh, you're never going to beat that because you're only using word of mouth. You're using posters stuck on walls, and you're not going to get that sort of goodwill in as much as this guy would, because people will just vote for, yeah, I saw him do his campaign. Yeah, vote.
So has there ever been a time in Kenyan history where there was like an underdog that didn't necessarily have all of the financial resources?
No.
Well, damn, dog. Thanks for listening.
World
Well,
is a bitch, mate. So it's
the world is a fucking bitch. And that is definitely true. And I like how this film didn't shy away from, the ugly truth, the truth that gets buried between cultural expectations, religious expectations, political expectations, as well as family expectations.
And we see how all that is sort of tied in together, because in as much as Kenna's dad is running in the sort of political space, what's transpired with Kenna and the society and the community finding out that she's gay, they all start turning on the dad.
Yeah.
They start graffitiing his wall. They don't go to his shop, affecting his financials. He can't support his family probably then on. But you still see him stand by his daughter, because if there's anything in this world he will not do is give up on her.
There were quite a few moments where I teared up in this movie, and that was fucking one of them.
Yeah.
Because you wanna believe that on some level, your parents or you as a parent, can see the people you love as the people you love. Not as some sort of veneer of what they should present themselves to society.
Yeah. And I reckon the dad sort of knew already, because he had seen Kenna and Ziki out.
Yeah.
And I think putting two to two together, you're like, maybe you suspected it, because he didn't seem shocked. He didn't seem shocked when he came to pick her up at the police station either.
So I guess, there's a conversation we can have another day about him leaving the mother, even though she seemed to have been sick. There's definitely a conversation to be had about him leaving his wife and being with someone else and having a baby with someone else. There's definitely something to be said about that. But again, that's not the conversation we're going to have today. But I guess the thing that I wanted to point out is, he was not judgmental at all. And the mother that had, deservedly so, any sort of bitterness that she might have had. But the unfortunate thing that wasn't deserved was she pretty much directed that in any direction she could. And unfortunately, it was always targeted as Kenna. And then, it's just convenient she found, her sexuality to blame it on, breaking this house apart.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess that's just sort of a general note. Usually people that are very conservative or have really high standards that they perhaps might not even observe themselves are very fucking judgy.
Mm.
And, love is love, as we all know. But, love shouldn't be conditional, especially when it comes to family.
Oh no, it shouldn't. It shouldn't.
So I think it was interesting that politics as a theme was brought into this film. I guess going back to how I feel overall about the film, I think maybe if that wasn't in this film, we might have had more time to explore them as characters, Kenna and Ziki.
Maybe so, but I think
OT, I said how important it was, but I also said I was going to say some real things.
Fair
You're
enough.
going to give me the same sort of Black Star treatment right now. Oh, goodness me. Let's talk about religion for a little bit, because this also plays a recurring theme throughout the film. It's also a way to set a backdrop of what has just happened or what is about to be. A lot of the sermons are centered around, the central plot of the film. And obviously a lot of that intertwined with sexuality.
Yeah.
Right. We have a particular sermon where the pastor is talking about, I love my wife. I love my wife so much. But the people that are supporting same-sex marriage don't see it that way. Right. And they're even going against the government. Right. So I guess in regards to that sermon, it was just interesting. I actually really enjoyed the vehicle and the messaging of having those sermons intertwined. I personally found it to be very satirical and contrary in many ways, but as a device for storytelling, I thought that was quite effective.
It was quite effective because that's what the church sort of plays a role in sort of pushing this sort of prejudices out, because it's written in some old fucking book that God doesn't like gay people. And then
interesting, very, very interesting fact. When the Bible was translated into English, they actually replaced pedophile, or the equivalent of pedophile, with homosexuals.
There you go.
So there you go, friends and lovers. So unless you're going to translate it yourself, again, I know we talk about it a lot. We even jest about it a lot. But once you guys are ready, we will have a real conversation about institutionalized religion. But maybe not today. As far as I could tell, they were Christian.
Christian.
What sort of Christian? Because they weren't. Because usually Catholic have cathedrals, right?
No.
Maybe like Pentecostal?
It sounded Catholic. Not even Catholic. Maybe Pentecostal. You're
I didn't feel the heavy whipping guilt.
Regardless of what denomination, it's sort of a tool where, like, it gets religion playing such a major role in developing countries because of all this sort of archaic rules and regulations, be it you can't use condoms, propagating the spread of STDs and shit. And you sit back and wonder exactly who it is it's serving.
Yeah.
Africans as a whole had their own sort of way of life before colonization. They had their own beliefs, their whole systems, until it all got enforced and all changed. And to just follow that blindly now, knowing the history, knowing the context,
Yeah.
not only is it infuriating, but to take yourself back and to castigate your fellow people because of who they fucking love
Yeah.
is just next level ridiculous. And I think watching that, it just got me really riled up and angry. And you just want to smack some sense into people. And I don't know.
Can we have like a GTA OT edition where you just go around smacking people?
Yeah.
I think, without being too controversial, to not acknowledge that religion as an institution isn't used as a political tool, especially in regards to oppression, is definitely a conversation that needs to be had. Again, maybe we're not ready for that as a people, but
they go hand in hand.
They definitely do. It is very effective to oppress people and say, turn the other cheek.
Because you can see, politicians go to church when they want to get their message out. Okemi went to church and he was called out by the pastor. He was given a shout out.
Yep.
And that's a way of sort of semi-endorsing him.
But also at the same time...
And just because the pastor said that, you'll be like, ooh, I'm going to vote for him. Because...
But also at the same time, Okemi is contributing to the congregation.
Oh, to the coffers, of course.
And I think, actually, good point, because I think that's the first time we're introduced to the church and the pastor. And he also gives a shout out at the same time to John, a very successful businessman.
Yeah.
Right? So he knows who's lining his pockets.
Oh, for sure.
He takes it from all sides. I guess money isn't loyal to anyone.
No, it is not.
There's definitely an influence that religion has, and political ties intertwined with that. Let's move on to something possibly a little bit lighter, and let's talk about. I feel like it's tangible enough to bring it up as a discussion point. How big and how delicious, you can decide. But let's talk about Mama Atim and the theme of gossiping.
That is so, like, I watched this, I was like, oh my God, I could name 5-10 people who are like that when I grew up. Like, it's such a vice. It's
like, what else do you do? Do you just sit around waiting for gossip?
Oh, the people who are exactly like that. All they do is gossip. All they do is just be in other people's business. And wow, she just goes above and beyond to be in everyone's.
In some cultures, how you have like professional mourners.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe they don't get paid, but I feel like there are many professional gossipers as well. But also at the same time, it was very interesting when Kenna's mum said, Mama Atim does gossip, but she never lies.
Yep.
So she kind of she's essentially the Daily Mail of the community.
Oh, Daily Mail lies though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The Nairobi Mail.
Let's go with the Nairobi Mail.
But I really appreciated that this film had so much depth, and it had so many layers. It wasn't just, this is a community of Kenyan people, but there were different layers to it. And there were different life experiences, and there were different growth levels.
Yeah.
As well. But at the epicenter, you always have the gossipers, right? Remember when the mom wanted to go over because she wanted to know what the news was, and then she found out what the news was and she didn't want to know?
Yep, with the baby.
I don't know, man. Again, we're not targeting Kenna's dad because he loved and supported Kenna. But man, to move on with another woman and still be in the same area, in the same congregation, and having the wife have to see it every week. Again, that is not a kettle of fish that we are tackling today. Something else that's a little bit more light and a little bit more fun. I just wanted to talk about Kenya and Nairobi as a backdrop. A couple of times on our podcast, we have referenced Nairobi Half-Life, but we haven't necessarily just talked about Nairobi and Kenya as a backdrop in general. So I guess what was it like? What was it like knowing that this is for international consumption and having it so proudly, so fiercely, so unapologetically Kenyan?
I think they did it well. I think they portrayed the sort of socio-economic status quo, and they've done it in such a tasteful, artistic way that it clearly represents how Kenya is and how Nairobi is. and all those sort of aspects of, with the politics, and it's all just, it's small scale in the movie, but that's just how generally it is.
Yeah.
And to me, they captured the essence of Nairobi.
Yep.
To the T, because I don't think I've seen anything that's done this so beautifully before.
And I guess also an interesting thing is, and feel free to sound off, OT, but when Kenna was talking to Ziki saying, let's go out for a soda. I want to take you out. Let's go out for a soda. And they literally went to Mama Atim's kiosk.
Yeah, there's always that one
But
place
why
in the
didn't they
hood.
go somewhere? Why
No, man, you're in the neighborhood. There's that one place you all go.
She is in prime position to be the gossip if she's like where the food source is.
It is what it is. Yeah, there's just that one place you go in the neighborhood. You have your own shop. You're local. You guys call it locals here.
Yeah, you're local.
Yeah, and you go there regardless of whether or not if there's something else better on the other side of the neighborhood, or a different neighborhood. You don't. You stay true to your local. That's what it is. So.
But I thought it was interesting that everyone notoriously knows how much of a gossip she is, but they still end up there.
Yeah, because at least they thought they would be being careful, and they really weren't.
Fair enough. It was lovely. It was lovely to give this film some time and come back to it so we can cover it on the podcast. A lot of the times we'll watch something and then we won't record it, and because it's too soon to watch it again, we might not record it for a while. But I'm glad that we circled back on this film. I definitely have I have more of a love for this film. I always had an appreciation for it. I always understood how important it was to queer cinema, and also to the creative arts in Kenya, and how groundbreaking it is, and how it will continue to trailblaze in Kenya and also the world at large. But I really found my way with love in this film. And I guess what I just wanted to say as well is, we are all fallible creatures, but don't be a fucking dick.
Yeah.
If you have children that understand who they are, accept them. If you have parents that don't accept you, this is coming from someone that is a major cut you the fuck out of my life if you're being toxic. But in regards to Ziki is a very good example. You need to conserve your sense of self, and you need to preserve your happiness. And if people are coming into your sphere, with malicious intent, whether they are people that you have loved for years or whether they are someone that is completely new, you need to protect that. And that's something that is so important. Fights will continue to need to be fought, petitions, protests, donations, systemic sort of discrimination, but you need to protect your sense of self.
For sure.
And I really feel like that is very important, not just to this film, not just to Black Lives Matter, but also to the LGBT community. If no one's going to look after you, then you look after yourself. Then everyone else can worry about themselves.
Yep.
And you need to protect your happiness. And whatever that happiness is, we love and support you. And don't be a fucking dick. And don't let people be a fucking dick to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
So let's end off this episode with a quote by Wanuri in one of her interviews. I think it was the Toronto International Film Festival. The right to love is a basic human right.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fucking tweet. Is that what the kids say?
Yep.
That is the tweet. Thank you so much, guys, for listening to this episode. It is a vibrant movie and it is very fun. But, there are some, I guess, there is love out there, but there's also a lot of ugliness opposing love as well. So I'm glad that we were able to tackle that in this episode. But we fucking love you guys. And take care of yourselves.
Take care of yourselves indeed.
Let's finish off in a segment we call For Your Reference.
I'm gonna reference From a Whisper. It's the first feature film of Wanuri's.
Mm-hmm.
And it fictionalizes sort of the terrorist attack that happened in the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi. It's a beautiful, deep story that I think everyone should just dive in and watch. Search for it. Should be in Amazon. Go for it.
Nice. I've got 2 references. I guess just another reminder that we did A Single Man this time last year, so definitely check that out. And a movie that we haven't covered that we should cover is Moonlight.
Ooh.
Nice. So I say it, but everyone needs to be said. We fucking love you. Take care of yourselves. If you want to see us on a day-to-day sort of basis on Twitter and Instagram, we are For Your Ref Pod.
You could write us an email at hello@fypodcast.com.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Kwaheri.
Nice. Bye.